Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is Eric Spellman, and today's topic, putting your digital best foot forward. First impressions. Now, this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a little bit of fun at the end if I can get there quick enough. And that's because this session is all about what people first think of your website. So what I want to do at the very end is, if any of you are brave enough, I'm going to live judge your website and say whether it's a good one or a bad one, whether it gives people good first impressions or bad ones. And I'm going to be direct. I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to pull any punches. In fact, I like to call this the "your baby is ugly" speech. So if you want me to talk about your website, give you advice on it, I'm not just gonna diss it, okay? I'm gonna tell you what you need to change. So let me know, be thinking about that. And then if you're interested, put your website in the chat when we get to the end. But until then, I will take your questions. So please ask them in the chat. And if I miss them, I'll try not to, but I will see them. So let's talk about this because I really want to get to that point. We're gonna have a lot of fun when we look at other people's websites. Uh, when we talk about first impressions, you got to realize that when people first get to your website, they're going to judge you. They're just going to judge you. In fact, you do this. Whenever you go to a website for the very first time, you judge and you make a judgment about that company, and you make a judgment about their employees, and you even make a judgment about their products or services. You may not even think about it, but you do that. I mean, human beings, we judge. It's just part of our nature. It kind of goes back to, the time where you look at another animal and you have to decide whether it's a predator or not scary and not something to worry about. It's in our genes to judge. And so don't assume that it's always a bad thing. Okay. It's just an inherent thing that we do. Now, if we take it too far, that can be a bad thing. And we can also use it as a weapon, and that's not a good thing. But just realize that everyone who goes to your website, especially for the first time, is totally judging you. Okay. And let me tell you how. These are the areas we're going to be covering, and I'm just going to flag them for you right now. The key is to understand your customers. Every single one of them has ADD. Every single one of them has a problem with attention. Okay. And you've got to keep their attention. The homepage is key. The homepage, remember, being the first page of your website. That is going to be the most important page on your website to make sure that you capture their attention. The menu bar, the navigation bar with the home, about us, contact us, all that, that is key as well. And you've got to make good decisions about that. Also, you're going to realize that everyone is lazy. And I'll explain what that means in a minute. Also, they don't trust you. People who get to your website for the first time have no trust in you whatsoever. And also, people look at your pictures, and your pictures are way more important than you think. And some of you are really screwing this part up. And finally, we're going to talk about a few other key considerations. And after that is when I'll open it up to do some live judging of websites. Okay. So let's move on and talk about everyone has ADD. Every single person on the internet has attention deficit disorder. I'm here to tell you, people. And that's why I always make this one of my big rules of websites. I must be able to get to any page on your website within 3 clicks. That's right, 3 clicks, because I won't give you a fourth. If I can't find something on your website, if I'm looking for the solution to a problem, for the answer to my question, for a product that helps me out, if I can't find that within 3 clicks, I'm giving up. Some of you do not organize your website. You just have a whole random bunch of pages out there and expect me to hunt through them. I ain't going to do it. Realize that people scan, they don't read. When they land on a web page for the very first time, they don't read every word on that page. No one does that. What they do is scan. They start at the top left and move to the bottom right, and they're looking for pictures, words, something that'll stand out, something that will stand out. And that's why I'm here to tell you, you need to make sure that you bold, and italicize and make certain words stand out, that you have lots of titles, that you have, that I can scan it. And you know what I mean by that? We don't read everything, we scan. So also, how big are your paragraphs? If you are going to have text on the page, and yes, you do need text on your page, how big are these paragraphs? I tell people all the time, your paragraph better only have 2 to 3 sentences in it. I'd rather have a whole bunch of little paragraphs because they're easier to scan. How many times have you just seen just huge blocks of text and you're like, no, thank you. Exactly. So your paragraphs on your website need to have no more than 2 to 3 sentences each. Break them up. Also, the reading level of the text. Let me step back and tell you this real quick. You don't really get to pick the text for your website, okay? And the longer you've been in business, the worse you're going to be at coming up with the text for your website, mainly because you are too in the box. You know lingo that your customers don't. I remember I had this economics professor in college, and he was terrible. He was awful. The reason he was awful was this was like an Econ 101 course, kind of a beginner course, right? But he also taught at the upper levels of economics. And so I was in this course and he kept throwing out words I'd never heard of because he's been doing this so long that he started to assume that everyone knew what those words already meant. He had forgotten what ground zero meant. And some of you are exactly like my econ professor. Some of you put words on your website that impress people, but people feel too stupid to contact you. The goal of a website is to communicate. The goal of a website is to generate a lead. The goal of a website is to generate a sale. And if they don't understand what you're saying, they're going to feel too stupid to even talk to you. So you got to get rid of that lingo. We're not trying to impress people with our vocabulary. We're not trying to come up with all these multisyllabic words like we did back in the 9th grade to impress our English teacher. No, our goal is to communicate. So I'll give you some advice right now. You keep that reading level at a 5th grade level. That's right, 5th grade level, if you expect people to keep reading. And your font. Oh my gosh, some of you go crazy with this. I don't see this as much anymore. Don't go crazy with fonts on your website. Yes, you can change fonts on your website, but this isn't a poster for an upcoming club event. No, your font, I'll just be honest, must be Arial. If you need another font, make it Times New Roman, but that's it. Arial should be your main. Now, why do I say that? Why do I say Arial? Why am I so hip to Arial being the font on your website? You know how the text is. Because scientifically, Arial is the most readable of the text. It's the easiest to scan. But when you start using Unicorn Fun number 5 font, you know, what is this, a wedding invitation? No, make it readable, make it professional. If you have to use more than one font, I would say use Arial for your titles and maybe Times New Roman, because that's kind of the second most readable. Times New Roman for your paragraphs. But really, I would just say Arial for everything. Don't go crazy with the fonts, people. It just makes it hard to read. The home page is key. It really is. You heard me say that earlier. The home page is the first page of your website. In other words, when someone types in www.yourcompany.com, it's where they go. It's the front door to your website, if you will. And people, a lot of people, in fact, the vast majority of people are going to be landing there first. And so they're going to be making a decision about whether to go further or not based on that, on how it looks and how it scans. So let's talk about how people scan a website, because they've actually done studies on this. Typically, when you land on a web page for the very first time, on a homepage especially, your eyes start in the upper left-hand corner. And the reason for that is because that's typically where a logo goes for a company. And the reason we do that is to make sure we landed on the right page, that we didn't misclick or type in the wrong address. So the top left is where your logo should be. I'm not a big fan of you putting your logo in the top right. And I'm not a big fan of you putting your logo in the middle. Your logo should be in the top left, because when we land on a web page, our eyes always start there. And then what they do is they slant down to the left. Okay. In other words, we start with the logo and we just go down to the left, or actually down to the right. Start with the logo up here, down to the right. And what we're looking for is a picture, a phrase, something that says we're in the right place. And the most important thing here, though, is you got to realize that when you're looking at a homepage, let's say on your computer, you're not seeing the whole homepage usually. To see the whole homepage, many times you have to scroll. But did you know that 80% of your first-time visitors don't scroll? They completely decide whether to stay on your site or not based on what shows up in that first screen full of information. Now, it gets even more interesting, because what if they're on their phone? They will decide if they're in the right place based on that first screen full on their phone. So I'm here to tell you, screen real estate has values, just like it does in the real world. It's location, location, location. And the higher your information is on a page, the more valuable that space is. Because the longer the page gets, the fewer people will ever make it down there. If you're putting your most important information at the bottom of your page and it's a long page, forget it. Ain't no one going that far to decide if they're going to stay on your site. Also, too many people, when they have a website built for a company, for instance, a large company, they may actually put a committee in charge of making the website for the company, and the problem is, this committee, who's making the final choice on whether the website is good or not? The boss, right? Well, too many times, this little committee, in their attempt to impress the boss, will build the homepage especially to impress the boss. Lawyers are the worst at this. And don't get me wrong, I'm not dissing on lawyers. Yes, I am. I'm not dissing on lawyers, but I've just seen this too many times. They build an ego site where you land on their page and it's just a picture of the lawyer with his arms crossed, looking all tough and mean. And it's all about the lawyer. And too many times when sites like that are built, I realized that lawyer, all he really wanted to do was to impress his other lawyer friends on the golf course by showing his website. It's all about the ego. Remember, it's not about the lawyer. It's about what the lawyer does. When people typically call a lawyer, it's because they need legal help or they're in legal trouble. They want to know that this lawyer can help them with that, not that the lawyer looks good in a picture. Okay, so check your ego at the door. I'm not a big fan of just pictures of the owner on the homepage. Okay, it's about what you do, not who you are. The menu bar is important. This is where we talk about navigation. How we're going to get around. And so I tell people all the time, keep it horizontal. In other words, keep it, going this way across the top. Some people actually put the menu bar down the side. Okay, I'm not a fan of that because when you put it down the side, you're basically squeezing everything else a little smaller to make room for the menu bar. And when you do that, it makes your page longer. You have to scroll farther. And also there's this big blank bar on the left-hand side once you start scrolling. So keep it horizontal across the top. That's usually what I tell people, not going down the side. And if you have a mobile phone, you've probably already discovered that the way to get to this menu bar is through the hamburger. And that's what I'm showing here in this graphic. Those three lines, you'll see them on your phone. And those are becoming synonymous with, we call it the hamburger menu. And when you click it with your finger, that's how you can see the actual navigation bar. And that's how they make it fit on a mobile device. Okay. So make sure that if you're the mobile version of your website, in my opinion, uses the hamburger symbol, the three bars like that, because people are starting to learn that that's how they get to your navigation. Use the right words. If you sell something on your site, where people can actually enter their credit card and buy it, use the right words. Use shop now, don't use products. Always use active verbs. I tell people all the time, you'll get 3 times as many clicks, and they've done studies on this, by using shop now than just using catalog or products. And that's because people will do what you tell them to do. Don't tell me otherwise. Science says otherwise. Okay. Or science says that's exactly what happens. And you don't ask nicely. You don't say, please shop with us. No. Click here, please. We never say please in marketing. Okay. We always tell them what to do, and we tell them to do it now. It's not rude. People expect it, and they will obey, believe it or not. The way you order the menu, what comes first? Well, typically the home button comes first, and you should always have a home button. In addition, the logo should also, if anyone clicks on your logo in the upper left-hand corner, it should always take them to the home page. They've come to expect that. But back to the order by clicks. The home, HOME, should be the first item always. And then after that, the way you're going to order it is by the popularity of the page. In other words, the most popular page will be next. For a lot of sites that sell things, it would be shop now, might be next. It just depends. What is the most popular thing? The item you'll probably have at the very end is the About Us. While it is the least looked at page on your site, kind of your history, who you are, all that, there are people who it is important to. And so I always tell people you need to have an About Us page, because while it will be the least looked at page, it's also very important for those who don't know who you are and will only do business with someone that they know a little more about. Next, everyone is lazy. By the way, if you have a question, just ask. And I'm happy to answer. Just ask it in the chat. Everyone is lazy, and you got to get used to that, including me, including you. And that's why I tell people would rather watch something than read something. You can put a video and a blog side by side, and they would rather watch the video than read your blog. That's just the nature of humans. I'm not saying it's a good thing, a bad thing. I'm not putting a value on it. I'm just telling you that's how it is. And that's why I'm such a big fan of video, because that's how people want to receive their information these days. And the younger you are, the more likely you are to want to watch video rather than read a whole bunch of paragraphs. The home page, too many people try to overload it sometimes, and they try to put all their products on it. They try to do everything on the home page, on one page. I would rather you break it up into smaller bite-sized pieces than to overload that home page. And so I tell people only put teasers on the home page, because listen to me, and this ain't in the presentation, which, by the way, they're going to get you this entire presentation, so don't worry about writing all this down. Just write down what's important to you. What I'm saying is, your homepage, it should just have teasers. And what is a teaser? It's simply something to get people to click. People ask me all the time, Eric, what's the purpose of the homepage? What's the purpose of the homepage? Your homepage only has one purpose, and that is to get one more click. The only purpose of your homepage is to get people to go deeper, is to convince them to go deeper into your website. People ask me all the time, and I think I covered this in my last presentation, the most important web statistic to look at is called the bounce rate. The most important one. The bounce rate is the percentage of people who land on a page and don't click on anything. They bounce off, they leave. Your bounce rate better be below 20%. If your bounce rate is above 20%, it means they don't like your website. I'll just be honest. I told you this would be low tech. People ask me all the time, what's the easiest way to know if people actually like my website? What's your bounce rate for your homepage? They say, well, it's like 80, 90%. Yeah, they hate it. It's not doing what it's supposed to. So a lower bounce rate, in other words, down in the 20% or below, means that the majority of the people clicked on something on that page. They did not bounce off. Okay. Also, too many of you are focusing on your products and not the solutions. I tell people all the time, No one wants a shovel. So let's say you sell shovels. No one wants a shovel. They want a hole. Remember that. They want the solution, not your product that helps them achieve it. So talk more about the solution. Talk more about the problem they're trying to solve than your product that actually fixes it. I'm telling you, people start out with a problem and they're looking for a solution. They start out with a question and they're looking for an answer. If you never address the question, if you never address the problem on your website, then you'll never show up when they're seeking the solution. So talk about the solutions, talk about the problems that your product actually solves or helps them solve. Remember, no one wants a shovel, they want a hole. I shouldn't even have to talk about this. Your website had better have a phone number on every single page, at the top, at the bottom, at least. How many times have you ever been to a website and you just wanted to call them up? How many times have we ever looked up a website just to get a phone number? I'm telling you, some people out there do not put phone numbers on their website because they think, well, we would rather them email us. We don't want them bothering us with all these phone calls. What? I don't care how I get business. I don't care how I get leads. You know, high tech, low tech, I don't care. I just want the lead. Why are we making it difficult? How many times have you been on a website and you just can't find their phone number and you get all frustrated? Your phone number had better be on every single page. And I recommend it be at the top. They don't trust you. You got to realize everyone who lands on your website for the very first time, they don't trust you because they don't know you. And we all worry about the web because there's so many hackers out there. There's so many flim flam people and con men and all of that. So we don't immediately trust people. So your goal, especially with the homepage, is to increase that trust. The way I tell people to do that is I tell them, give it away and they will pay. That's a little statement I use all the time. My mentor taught it to me. On my website, ericspellman.com, you'll see every video I do. I tell people everything I know is in those videos. And if you just go watch those videos, you would never need to hire me. Now, some people say, Eric, why would you say something like that? Isn't that stupid, Eric? Aren't people just going to go watch your videos and then not use you and not pay you and not need you? No, that's what I used to think. But what ends up happening is people will watch the videos and they'll go, wow, okay, that's going to be harder than I thought. But this guy was helping me out. I bet he knows how to do it. Let's call him. Haven't you ever wondered why plumbers create all these YouTube videos on how to fix pipes and fix clogged drains? You would think, isn't that plumber just losing business because of his? No, he knows what I know. Give it away and they will pay. Because here's the deal. What ends up happening is it positions you as an expert. And when these people realize they don't either have the ability or the desire to go through everything you just did in that video, who are they going to call? They're going to call the person who tried to help them. You see, in my videos, I don't try to sell you anything. I don't say, if you want the answer, give me a call. If you want the answer, give me this. No. I'm telling you, share everything you know with people. You'll get more business. I promise. Because people would rather do business with an expert than a salesman. Now, you realize on a website, you got to get their information. I mean, everyone visits your website is anonymous. They really are. Everyone is anonymous until they tell you who they are. So your goal is to get them to tell you who they are. So I like to trade for that. You know, a lot of people, I ask them, I say, how many people fill out your contact us form? How many, contact us forms do you get a week? And a lot of them kind of give me that, I don't know that we've ever gotten any. All that means is you don't understand the concept of the trade. You see, people don't just give away their private information for no reason. They're not just going to give it to you because you asked for it, but they will trade for it. The proof of that is at any conference you've ever gone to, before the pandemic. You remember in the vendor area of that conference, there are all these fish bowls on these tables. And in those fish bowls were what? Business cards, people's contact information. Now, how did those business cards get there? Was the vendor going around secretly stealing them? No. People happily put their own information into that bowl. Why? Because they wanted a chance to win the iPad, because they wanted a luggage tag, because they wanted a koozie or a t-shirt. In other words, they were trading. So if you want more information from your contact us forms, you got to give them something in return. And I'm not even saying it has to be something that costs you money. I don't have time to go over that exact thing because I've already covered it once, but feel free to watch that last video I've done and you'll see what I mean. And it all has to do with the trade, and it doesn't have to cost you nothing, but if you do it right, you can get 5 to 10 leads a week, depending on what you do. Testimonials. This is one of the best ways to get people to trust you. I'm not talking about reviews per se. I'm talking about testimonials. A testimonial is usually 2 to 3 sentences long. And a lot of people say, well, Eric, I wait for, people to write letters or send me an email saying, and then, I'll put it on my website. Okay. Can I tell you something about testimonials? Can I tell you how big companies do them? Get ready, because I've actually had people walk out of my presentations based on what I'm about to tell you. Okay. But sit with me. Trust me. Everything I'm about to tell you is 1000% ethical. Now you're really listening, aren't you? Because at some point in what I'm about to tell you, you're going to think that it's not. But stick with me. Here we go. A good testimonial is 2 to 3 sentences long. A good testimonial speaks to one of your competitive advantages. Now, what's a competitive advantage? It's something that sets you apart from your competitors. Because a lot of times when people don't know your business, they don't know why you're better than your competitors. They don't understand enough. They're too naive. They're too ignorant. They just don't know. Y'all all seem the same. I mean, it's like, what's the difference between Domino's and Pizza Hut? Pizza's pizza, right? So what you do is, and I'm going to give you some homework here. I want you to write down maybe 5 or 6 competitive advantages. In other words, what makes you better than them? It doesn't need to be something negative about them. Well, I'm not a crook and they are. No, it's got to be like, we have more stores than they do, so we're more reachable. Our prices are lower. The quality of ingredients is better. And you can't use customer service. God, don't ever say, you got to realize customer service means nothing anymore because everyone claims to have it. So it's not a good testimonial. A bad testimonial would be, they have the best customer service. It's got to be a competitive advantage. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to write down 5 or 6 competitive advantages. What makes you better than your competitors? Then, and here we go. Here comes with the part you're going to think I'm being unethical. Then you're going to write 5 or 6 testimonials, one for each one of those competitive advantages. Okay. And you're going to write them, and they need to be 2 to 3 sentences long, and they need to be exciting, and they need to be, something like, wow, I love these baked goods. Their ingredients are the freshest, organic, and the best. Highly recommend them. See, that's amazing testimonial. So you're going to write these down. You're going to actually create these testimonials, but you're not going to post them. Hear me. Stick with me. Hope I didn't lose anyone yet. Stick with me, because what you're going to do now is you're going to call some of your best customers and you're going to read a testimonial to them that you wrote. And you're going to say, hey, is this how you feel about us? And chances are they'll say, well, yeah. Then you're going to say, may I attribute this to you? And they're going to say, yeah. And so guess what? Now that you got attribution permission, trust me, this is how the big companies do them. And the reason they do it this way is because no customer will ever write a good testimonial for you. They will say something like, Eric was so nice. I just love his employees. Oh my God, that's the worst. It needs to say, Eric is the best speaker out there because I actually understand what he's saying. Not all this high-tech gibberish. See, that's my competitive advantage. And so what I would do is find someone who agrees with that, get their permission to put their name on and then post it on my website. I'm telling you, you can have 6 or 7 testimonials overnight using this method. And it's how every large company does it, because no human is going to give you a good one. It'll always be something stupid. Okay. People judge your pictures. I am not a fan of you taking your own pictures for your website. I'm just not. And that's because most people aren't photographers. Now, if you are a professional photographer, and that's what the unless is, unless you're actually good at taking pictures, then it's going to look like, you're using Uncle Harold's handy cam, and I don't need this to look like a kidnap video. You follow me? It needs to look professional. And a lot of people don't understand lighting and framing and all that kind of stuff. It needs to be, well, stock or a professional shot. Now, for those of you who haven't seen one of my previous sessions where I talk about stock photography is kind of generic pictures that represent a concept. Like, customer service might be 2 people shaking hands, it's a picture, it's a general picture. And what you do is you sign up with these stock companies like iStockPhoto.com or BigStockPhoto.com. There's a whole bunch of them out there. And you put those pictures on your website. Now, they immediately make your website look national because the pictures are national. They're good quality. But if you're just taking a picture of, someone sitting at their desk smiling up at you while they drink a Gatorade, you're going to look like a small town company. Remember, if your website doesn't make you look bigger than you are, you failed. I told you I'm going to tell you straight. How many times I can't tell you how many times I've run into people who are embarrassed of their own website, and they don't like giving it out to people to see because they're embarrassed because it doesn't make them look good. Chances are a big piece of that's because of the really awful pictures that are on that website. Hire a photographer if you want, and especially if you're a restaurant. Now listen to me. If your website is about food, especially prepared food, you do not get to take your own pictures. And that's because food, especially good-looking cooked food, is the hardest thing to take a good picture of. I can't tell you how many little small mom and pop, and in this area, little locally owned Mexican restaurants take their own pictures of their food and put it on their website, and it looks so gross. I would never want to eat there. You can actually see the pools of grease. It's just, I'm telling you, the best pictures of food, did you know? The best pictures of food you've ever seen on a website like of a national restaurant, it's not even food. They handcrafted them out of, and I'm not even going to go into it because it's kind of lunch, but they handcraft them and they put in the steam coming off of it. It's a Photoshop thing. The goal is to make food look good, and most people cannot photograph food well. And so I highly recommend, not only do you hire a photographer if you're a restaurant, but you hire one who is good at photographing food. Okay? Trust me on that. Ugh. I've been turned off by restaurants who photograph their own food. Also, if you have a website where you have slideshows, pictures going across, showing different aspects of your company, add text to them at the bottom to give them context. If you're trying to show, that, wow, you have a large factory, then say that. Big facilities, or large manufacturing capability. So what happens is the text reinforces what the photo is. Otherwise, people will be looking at that photo going, what am I trying to see here? The picture should communicate some of your competitive advantages. Remember, I had you write those down for the testimonials? Well, come up with pictures representing each one of those competitive advantages, and then add text to them to strengthen that advantage. and make that a part of your slideshow. There's some other key considerations. And by the way, now would be a great time to start entering your website in chat if you want me to look at it, because this is one of the last slides. No auto starting music, people. Do not have a website where it has music playing as soon as you land on it. Oh my gosh. I remember one time there was a little town in South Texas, and they said, Eric, would you review our website? Kind of like what I'm about to do for you people. And so I went to their website, and this banjo music just started playing, and it was awful. And I said, oh, that's easy. Get rid of that auto starting banjo music. And they said, Eric, we can't do that. I said, why? They said, because it was the mayor's son who was playing banjo. And I went, oh. People, auto starting music is only good for one thing, having a really high bounce rate. Because think about when people are on the internet. A lot of times you're researching the internet when you're at work and your boss isn't looking, and you're Googling stuff when you should be working. And the last thing you want is music starting to play, because it's basically, when that music starts playing through your speakers in your cubicle, it's basically shouting, I'm not working. So what are you going to do? You're going to close that down quicker than anything. I'm telling you, the bounce rate on sites that have auto starting music is so high. Don't allow anyone to tell you to autoplay a video or autoplay music or anything. There should be no sound that starts up when I go to your website. Excuse me. Is your website mobile friendly? Have you pulled up your website on a mobile phone? You realize more people are looking at your website on a phone than they are any other way. And so if you have to scroll left and right on your phone to read anything, it's not mobile friendly. Google mobile friendly test, Google, and actually use the word Google in it, Google, mobile friendly test, because Google actually has one. And you can, oh, stop it. I hate it when that happens. Okay. And it's free, and it'll tell you whether it's friendly or not. Avoid dancing raisins. And what I mean by that is sometimes people add things to a website just because they're cute. Remember back in the early days of the internet, there was a plumbing website that a guy brought to me. And he said, Eric, take a look at my website and tell me what you think. Well, on the website, and some of y'all remember when this was the case, there was a weather forecast on his plumbing website, like the current temperature in Amarillo and the weather forecast. And I said, why is that on there? And he goes, because it's cute, because I thought it was interesting. I said, but it has nothing to do with plumbing. You got to remember, it's like, why do you have that little smiling kitten, that animated GIF, that little on your, has nothing to do with plumbing. Why is there an American flag waving on your website? Has nothing to do with plumbing. It's not a matter of being patriotic or not. It has to do with, does it have anything to do with what you do? Dancing raisins just distract people. Remember the white space. Too many people try to fill in every gap. They put too much text, too many pictures. Go with the white space. It makes it easier to scan. I would rather have less text and more white space on a page. Also, on your contact us form, ask for the minimum. Some of you are asking for everything but mother's maiden name. So have a very small contact us form. Only ask for name, email, and phone. And if you have to, kind of a big, long one, kind of what's your question or something like that. You don't need anything more than that, because the more information you ask on a contact us form, the fewer people will fill it out. Why? Because everyone's lazy and they have ADD. Okay, so longer forms will get filled out less. Okay, it's time. Let's see what we got. Oh, wow, okay. Let me start back at the top. Okay. We'll start with Mike Georgia Duck. Oh, Okay. And remember, I haven't been to these websites, so you're getting my first impression. Okay, let's see. MikeGeorgia.com. Now, hopefully all y'all can see what I'm doing here. Can all of y'all see my, whenever I switch windows, I just want to make sure y'all can see it. Make sure. Okay, if y'all can't see it, let me know.
We're good.
Okay, so here we are. I landed on MikeGeorgia.com. Now, for half a second, it came up with Mike Georgia. It came up with the title. But, okay, wait. Okay, so there was a pop-up asking for an email address, and I'm okay with that, but it actually happened too quick, and it also didn't give me a reason to do it. Because to be honest, I don't know what this site is about. Looks like it has to do with guitars. The logo's cute. I don't see how it relates to guitars. Hey, by the way, if it sounds like I'm being mean, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm giving you my first impression. Like I said, whenever I do this, it's very popular when I do this, but I like to tell people this part is what I call the "your baby is ugly" speech. Okay. So we got the navigation bar. Like I said, the logo, I don't even get what it doesn't, I don't get that. The home button, love it. About music, join guitar club. I don't think these are in the order they should be in. There's a login. So maybe this is a guitar teacher, maybe. And so, and don't try to give me answers now because I'm just figuring this out. So I can scroll down. Nice picture there. Maybe that's Mike, I hope. And check out latest release here. I do not like typing in all uppercase. Uppercase, when you type in all uppercase, it's difficult to read. The eyes have to work harder because when you do mixed case, upper and lower, it creates easier patterns for your eyes to break apart. All uppercase is harder to read. So listen, book. Oh, okay. So this is his website, and he does do lessons, but also it's also his site where you can book him for a gig. Okay, now I get it. The symbols underneath, I don't really get what they have to do with guitars. They look like a part of a template. Listen, book, private lessons. Now, if I'd just look in the first screenful, which is what I have here, there's really no teasers. There's nothing telling me what to do except for join guitar club, but I don't have a reason to because I don't even know what it is. Private lessons, production sessions live. These are just photos, I guess. But notice when I hover over the photos, I actually see the name of the file down there. See that number? That's awful. Because that's just a picture. And up here, it's image 5212. I don't like that either. And so, like I said, it really doesn't give me. I like the little background thing I've been playing. That's kind of cool. But these pictures here, I'm not a fan. Social, that's how we can get there. Oh, here's a bad one. There's a broken graphic right here. Big broken graphic. And also it says 0 followers. I would never brag about that on a website. I just wouldn't. Because what that says is that, and no offense, Mike, but what it says is you're not popular. And so I would just, until you have a number of followers, I wouldn't even put that on there because all it says, it's just going to make people think, oh. So, and fix that broken graphic because it looks terrible. Also, I'm going to tell you something right now. I'm not a fan of the contrast between the white words and the blue background. It's not as good as it could be. I'm not a fan of white text. I'm just not. I would rather have black on white rather than white on light blue. You're going to have people say it's a little harder to see. I like your embedded YouTube video where I could actually see you play. It's good. Listen to explore. Okay. That's a place where people can see you, but notice the pop-ups that keep coming up when I hover over your photos. Those are the names of the files. So I would not do that. And what that usually means, and this may be too technical, is every photo has kind of an alt text, ALT text, that someone can put in the code. And so, for instance, instead of it saying 1622822, it might say something like, playing his best, that when you're, and it reinforces what it's saying, not just some long thing. This word services is next to unreadable. Not only is it all uppercase, but the white text, that's why I hate white text, is right here, is because it all blends in together. Once again, all uppercase, not a fan. And the way to contact them. Available for music placement, studio, or live performance. Copyright 2020, what? 2112, you live in the future, Mike. Mistakes like this just make people think that you're a small town player. Don't allow mistakes like that in there, okay? And I hope that was helpful. I'm sure Mike might have even hung up at this point. I hope not. Let's go to the next one. Some of y'all are going, oh, darn, I wish I hadn't given him mine now. We'll do OY or OUHealth.com. Whoops, wait. OYOU Health.com. Oh, I do not like your domain at all. Because when you tell people OUHealth.com, they're going to spell it wrong. Okay. Here we go. Because it's OYOU Health. So I'm not a fan of that. OptimalU Health. I would rather it be OptimalU.com. And you might be saying, well, Eric, that wasn't available. I would still find something better than that. Okay, OptimalU Health, customized healing based on your body. Okay, at least you're telling me what you do. Lots of white space, that's okay. I do think there's some wasted space that could have been used here for better teasers. Try to connect with me on that. I love the logo. Logo's beautiful. It kind of reinforces the name of it. Call today. I love that teaser, but I don't have a reason to call you today. And also there's no phone number on this site. I would rather, maybe I just want to call. Why do I have to click a button? Where's the phone number? Oh my. Okay. Welcome to OptimalU. Now you did bold some items, so it is easier for me to scan. And look, there's a little teaser. Schedule your free 15-minute discovery call today. I like that a lot. I do not like the fact that it's all in uppercase. I also don't like the fact that we're wasting so much space because we centered everything. It looks pretty cheap when you do that. And also it wastes a whole bunch of space. Okay. And there's no pictures. Oh, here we go. Okay. Client testimonials, meet Anna. Instead of saying client testimonials, I would actually just print them. I would start putting them all over the place. That helps to reduce the distrust, and it increases trust if the testimonials are kind of mixed in with the text. Let's see. Some of these, it's not as obvious that they're links. I can barely tell these are links because there's an underline. Meet Anna. I guess Anna is the owner. Right here, nutritional therapy. Got to watch out with the contrast. It's almost blending in with these light colors in the background. I do like the background. Looks nice and healthy. Learn more. Keep going. Therapeutic supplementation is way too big a word for normal people. I can tell that's remember I was talking about using language that's too big? That's one of them. Therapeutic supplementation. Those words mean nothing to me. And so they have no value to me. You do explain it down here. Vitamins and minerals are critical for healing. But that title up there makes me think that if you and I were to sit here talking, you would talk over my head. Learn more. Once again, I'm not a fan of white text. See how See how it's practically unreadable right there? Because it's blending into your background picture. Balance. And to be honest, I don't even understand what that's trying to say. Balance in what? Okay, and looking at this just looks like you threw some basic graphics on there. They look just thrown on there. Just little white graphics just tossed on there. And I understand why. You're trying to say you're a member of the Nutritional Therapy Association and you're trying to credential yourselves. I get that. Make them look better than that. I mean, they just look thrown together. More all uppercase text and then powered by Squarespace. When you see that powered by Squarespace, it means you didn't pay a lot for this website because you can actually pay Squarespace to remove that line. So this makes you seem like a small company. I would pay the extra money to have that ditched. Okay, this almost feels like a free website. Yeah, okay, let's move on to the next one. I want to get as many of these as I can. And yeah, I understand, Anna, it's still under construction. I understand. Okay, do you have any advice on adding translated information to your website? If you're ever going to put translated information on a website, I would have a real person translate it. Do not rely on Google to do it because people who actually speak that language natively will laugh you out of the park. Always use a real person to translate. Here we go. ValenciaFlourMill.com. Let's go there. Okay. Okay. I like the logo. I don't like this all in uppercase, Valencia Flour Mill. I don't understand what corrugated steel, why that's, I understand it looks like your shop. Home about products, distribution, testimonials, contact. You're looking, I don't think you actually sell items on here, do you? You probably just are looking for leads. Okay. You do have a little slideshow. I like it. It keeps it moving. You have 100. This is your About Us. It looks like everything was bolded. When everything is bolded, nothing is bolded. It just makes it harder to read. You're giving credit for your photos, so come visit our website. Look at the difference in fonts here and here, where preservation meets progress. Click to see our new bread making post, and notice how hard that is to read until you hover over it. Okay. There's your address, phone and fax, buy online at Statewide, buy online at Haley May. Notice the copyright 2018. All that tells me is that you haven't updated your website in a while. So I would definitely get that taken care of. Let me see. I'll just be honest. I don't get the background on this. I understand that's what your building looks like, but it has nothing to do with what you do. It just shows your building. Some of y'all are probably thinking I'm just being mean for the sake of being mean. I'm really not. I'm just being truthful with my opinion. The colors could use some work. This color blue does not go with that background. That's part of the problem I have, is that the colors are clashing pretty hard. Always let a pro pick complementary colors. Yeah, the about doesn't need to be here, unless that is the most important thing. And I really don't see teasers on here except for click to see our new bread making post. You don't really need to say click. Just tell people, see our new bread making post. And I don't understand what it means by scroll down. Why are you telling me that? Okay. Let's go to the next person. What's my opinion about like Wix and Weebly and all that? Yeah, I have no problem with those. But pick a Pick a template that works with your company. Don't just pick the first one because it looks cool. Pick one that actually the colors already work with your logo. Yeah, I love it. Whenever I do this, people say, well, it's not done yet. Mike, Georgia. Yeah, I get that. Okay, let's see. Keep going. Anyone else? I'm looking for other. Is there anyone else who wants me to look at their website? I have about 4 minutes left. And I'm happy to. And like I said, I'm not trying to tear down your website. I'm just telling you, you need to look national. It's a trust thing. When it looks like your website, and I'm not saying any of these were, but when it looks like your website was designed by a 12-year-old, then people are gonna, oh, here we go. Hispano Cham, whoa. HispanoChamberVC.org. Whoa. It's gonna be a hard one to do. HispanoChamberVC.org. Okay, let's see. Hispano. I guess I've just never seen that word. I hate the logo. Number one, it's in the middle, and number two, it has words on it. So the logo has to be pretty big for people to see. A logo should be symbolic, kind of like McDonald's. It's a symbol, like Nike, like Pepsi. Their logos are all symbolic and really don't have words in them. In order for you to tell what this logo is, you really have to be close to it. Let's see, the nav bar. It's okay. Hey, it's fine. It looks, the photo, I like the photo on here. It kind of catches my attention. Looks like y'all are having fun. The about, events, and donate. I like that. You're keeping it easy. You're keeping it up to date. I like that. Okay. You're also saying congrats to these people. Website designed with the help of. That's fine. You're a nonprofit. I get that. Okay. Yeah, this is pretty good. Like I said, number one thing I hate, logo. I just hate the logo. It's more of a New Mexico logo than it is a Chamber of Commerce logo. So other than that, it's not bad. Not bad at all. See if I get one more in. Okay, ICEnergyrate.com. ICEnergyrate.com. I'm not a fan of the .com because it doesn't make sense when you just look at it. It looks like it's the word ice. Your eye sees the word ice, and then the rest of it doesn't make sense. What you meant was inspection connection. LC. Shouldn't it be LLC? Maybe not. Let's see. Resident. Oh, I don't like these words. Are hard to see on this background. The bad contrast. And there's nothing up here at all. Look how your logo should be up here, up in the top left. This is just wasted space right here. This is not showing me anything. This is a picture of the outside. Okay, so it doesn't strengthen what you do at all. And also notice the nav bar is at the bottom of the screen when I first get here. That picture is too big is the problem. Inspection services, okay. Publish articles, okay. Uh-oh. What is that? What was that little arrow for? And why does it say homepage? That makes no sense. Some text. No more pictures. I don't know. The text is gray on white. I'm not a fan of gray on white. I do see some testimonials. Those are nice, but it's kind of boring at this point. Powered by WordPress, I would get rid of that. See, I like how you I like how you did your .com down here. I guess it's iceenergyrate.com. But if you tell people go to iceenergyrate.com, they're going to spell it wrong every time. Like I said, I just don't like your .com at all. It's confusing. Okay. Well, folks, it is 2 o'clock. And so I really appreciate y'all. And I'm sorry I couldn't get to Joaquin, but I really appreciate y'all giving me some sites to go to. And I hope you didn't take it personally. I'm just basically trying to be a person who's never been to your website, which I was, and just telling it to you straight. I'm not just going to go there and start complimenting everything like probably everyone when you were building the website did for you. I was going to be real with you. So I hope that was helpful. And I look forward to seeing you hopefully tomorrow when we talk about cybersecurity. And I believe the topic is the 10 mistakes hackers want you to make. So I hope to see you then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you to all our attendees. And shout out to Wayne Abraham, the previous director. I saw he's on the webinar. I'm going to stop recording